The rain fell hard that autumn evening, cold and heavy, as if the sky itself was mourning. Rose Catherine Merrick stood at the edge of a deep ravine, her shoes soaked, her dress clinging to her legs, her hair stuck to her face. She was not crying. She was calm in a way that frightened her. After 3 months of running, hiding, and fearing every shadow, she believed this was the end. Not because she was weak, but because she was tired in a way that reached into her bones. For 3 months, Rose had lived under names that were not hers. She had taken work she was not trained for, pretending to be a governess, smiling when spoken to, praying every night not to be discovered. She slept in small, rented rooms where silence felt loud and accusing. Every knock made her heart race. Every man's voice carried danger. She knew the man searching for her would not stop. He believed she owed him something, and he would not rest until he took everything from her. The ravine below was dark and swollen with rainwater. It would be quick, she believed that. She stepped forward, her foot sliding on the wet earth, her body tipping into the empty space. Strong hands caught her from behind. The grip was sudden, firm, impossible. She gasped as she was pulled backward, away from the edge, away from the fall that had seemed certain. "No," a deep voice said, calm and commanding. "That is not happening." She struggled because her body only knew how to fight. She pushed and struck, but the man holding her was stronger. He did not loosen his grip. He lifted her with clear purpose and carried her away from the ravine until solid ground replaced danger. When he finally set her down, Rose collapsed to her knees, shaking, unable to understand that she was still alive. Rain soaked them both. She looked up, barely able to see his face through the darkness. "What is your name?" he asked. "Rose," she whispered. "Rose Merrick. I am Henry James Ashford, Duke of Ravensfield," he said. "And you are not dying tonight." He spoke with certainty, as if the decision had always been his to make. Henry brought her to Ravensfield House in London. He summoned a physician without asking permission, gave orders that were obeyed instantly, and made sure Rose was warmed, fed, and placed in a room more beautiful than any she had ever known. Soft carpets, clean linens, and firelight surrounded her, and still she could not sleep. For 3 days she remained in that room. The Duke did not question her. Food was brought quietly. The physician, a serious man with thoughtful eyes, checked her health and spoke gently. Rose ate slowly, her body unsure how to accept kindness. On the 4th day, when she finally sat by the window and watched the busy London street below, Henry came to see her. "You are not ordinary," he said simply. "You are educated. You were raised with care. And you are afraid for reasons beyond poverty." Rose met his eyes and felt something inside her weaken, not fear. "Relief. I will not ask your reasons," he continued. "But I will offer you choices." He explained them carefully. He could return her to her family with a story they would accept. He could help her find respectable work. Or she could remain in his house, under his protection, for as long as she needed. No questions, no payment, only safety. "Why would you do this?" she asked. "Because everyone deserves the right to choose their future," he replied. "And you have been denied that." Rose chose to stay. Days became weeks. She was not treated as a servant, but she was not family either. She found her place quietly. She organized books in the library. She helped the housekeeper. She spent long hours in the garden, breathing freely for the first time in months. The Duke was often away, but when he was home, he spoke with her. Their conversations were careful but honest. He did not push. He listened. "You were running from someone?" he said one evening. "Yes." "Someone dangerous?" "Yes." "You owe him nothing," Henry said. "And if he ever tries to find you, he will answer to me." Rose believed him. 3 months later, Henry's sister arrived. Lady Margaret watched Rose closely, sharp-eyed and observant. Before leaving, she spoke plainly. "My brother is in love with you." Rose denied it, but the words stayed with her. Weeks later, Henry asked Rose to walk with him in the garden. He offered a plan. He would introduce her to society as a distant cousin. It would give her protection, freedom, and choices. And because, he admitted, I wish to know you better. Rose agreed. Under his name, she slowly stepped back into the world. With each passing month, her fear loosened its grip. She began to see Henry not just as a rescuer, but as a man of deep care and quiet strength. When he finally asked her to marry him in the same library where they had shared so many conversations, she said yes, but she did not tell him the truth. The wedding was small and elegant. Rose wore white silk and smiled when expected. Inside, fear twisted her chest. She was marrying a man she loved while hiding the darkest part of her life. As night fell and the house grew quiet, Rose sat alone on the edge of the bed, her hands trembling. A soft knock came at the door, and with it, the moment she could no longer escape. Henry entered the chamber quietly and closed the door behind him. He did not approach the bed at once. He looked at Rose as if he were trying to read something written beneath her calm face. The firelight touched his features and softened the strength that always surrounded him. "You are afraid," he said. "Yes," Rose answered, because she could not lie anymore. He moved closer, but slowly, giving her time. He sat beside her without touching her, his hands resting open on his knees. "Before anything else," he said, "I need you to know something. I did not marry you for obligation, and I will not claim anything from you that you do not choose to give." Rose felt her breath catch. "I know you are keeping secrets," Henry continued. "I know the danger did not end the night I found you. I know there is a man who has been searching for you." Her body stiffened. "I had you protected," he said. "Not to control you, but to keep you safe. His name is William Thornton. He will not reach you." The walls seemed to tilt around her. The secret she had guarded so fiercely was already known. "I need to tell you something," she whispered. "I know," Henry said, "and nothing you tell me will change what I feel." The words broke something open inside her. Rose told him everything. She spoke of the man who had forced himself upon her when she was powerless to stop him. She told him of the child she carried and lost while running in fear. She spoke of shame that did not belong to her but had wrapped around her all the same. She told him why she feared touch and why she believed she would never be whole again. Henry listened without interruption. When she finished, silence filled the room. Then he took her hand gently. "You were not ruined," he said. "You were wronged, and there is nothing about you that is unworthy of love." Rose began to cry, deep and shaking sobs that came from years of holding herself together. "I will not take your body," Henry said, holding her as she wept. "I will wait. I will protect you, and I will give you time." They did not share a marriage bed that night. Instead, Henry stayed with her until she slept, his presence steady and safe. The days that followed were quiet and careful. Henry made no demands. He spoke to her as a partner, not as someone who owned her. Slowly, Rose began to breathe again. Henry shared his own truths. He spoke of a childhood ruled by control and distance. He spoke of loneliness and duty. He told her that trust did not come easily to him either. "We are learning together," he said. Weeks passed. Rose began to reach for him first. A hand held during walks. A shoulder leaned against during evenings by the fire. Each small step mattered. One night, she asked him to help her undress, not for passion, but for trust. Henry moved with care, his touch slow and respectful. He looked at her not with desire alone, but with honor. "You are safe," he told her. When they finally came together, it was gentle and chosen. Rose learned that closeness did not have to mean pain, that love could live in patience. Spring came softly. Rose felt herself changing. She laughed more. She slept peacefully. She believed in tomorrow. And then she learned she was with child again. This time, there was no fear, only wonder. Henry's devotion deepened. He read, asked questions, stayed near. He treated her growing body as something precious. "I want our child to know love," he said. Their son was born on a bright spring morning. Henry waited outside the room, pacing, praying, holding hope in his chest. When he finally held the child, tears filled his eyes. They named him James. Rose recovered quickly. Nursing her son felt like reclaiming something stolen long ago. Her body was no longer a place of pain. It was a place of life. The man who had once hunted her faded into silence. Rose did not ask how. She trusted Henry had ended the danger. Years passed gently. Another child followed, then another. Rose began helping women like herself. With Henry's support, she created a safe home for those who had nowhere else to go. She listened. She understood. She offered hope without judgment. One evening, years later, Rose stood in the library and looked at her reflection. She was no longer the woman at the ravine. Henry came behind her and took her hand. "You survived," he said. "No," she replied softly. "I lived." And for the first time, she believed it fully. But life still held lessons yet to come. And love, as Rose would learn, was a journey that never truly ended. Years passed, not loudly, but with a steady grace that surprised Rose when she paused to notice it. Life did not become perfect. It became real. And in that reality, she found peace. James grew into a thoughtful boy, quiet in the way his father had once been. He watched more than he spoke and noticed when others were hurting. Eleanor, their second child, was spirited and curious, always asking questions and always certain that answers existed if one looked hard enough. Little Helen followed behind them, fearless and laughing, convinced the world was a place meant to be explored. Ravensfield House changed with them. Laughter replaced silence. All shoes were left in hallways. Toys appeared in corners once reserved for serious conversation. Henry moved through it all with a gentleness that surprised those who had known him only as a duke and a man of power. Rose watched him with their children and often felt a quiet amazement. This was the man who had pulled her from the edge of death. This was the man who now knelt on the floor to listen to a child's worries with the same seriousness he brought to matters of state. The home Rose founded for women grew slowly at first. One house became 2. Then 3 women arrived, frightened and broken, carrying shame that was not theirs. Rose never hurried them. She never demanded strength. She offered time, safety, and the simple truth that healing was possible. Some nights the stories she heard followed her into sleep. Henry noticed when her rest was troubled. He never pressed her to speak, but he was always present, always ready to listen. "You do not have to carry it alone," he reminded her. She believed him. 10 years passed since the night of the ravine. On that evening, the sky was clear. Rose stood in the garden with Henry, watching their children run across the grass, their laughter rising into the quiet air. "I still think of her sometimes," Rose said. "The woman I was that night." "So do I," she believed. She had no future, Rose continued. She believed pain was all that remained. And she was wrong, Henry said. Rose smiled faintly. She was not wrong about the pain. But she was wrong about what could come after. Henry took her hand. "Survival is not the end of the story," he said. "It is the beginning." Rose leaned against him, feeling the truth of those words settle inside her. She had survived. But more than that, she had built something from survival. A family, a purpose, a life shaped not by what had been done to her, but by what she chose afterward. Henry's work in Parliament had changed as well. He spoke more often of protection, of fairness, of responsibility. Progress came slowly, but it came. Conversations began where silence once lived. Rose never claimed credit. She knew change was built by many hands, but she also knew that stories mattered, and hers had given others the courage to speak. One evening, after the children were asleep, Henry and Rose sat together in the library. The fire burned low. The same room where he had once promised her safety now held a decade of shared life. "Do you regret marrying me?" Henry asked quietly. Rose turned to him, surprised. "Never. Even knowing what you carried," he asked. "Even knowing the weight of it. Especially because of that," she said. "You did not save me to own me. You saved me so I could choose." Henry reached for her hand. "You saved yourself," he said. "I only refused to let you disappear." Spring returned again, as it always did. Rose found herself expecting another child. This time, there was only calm joy. The children were excited. Henry was careful and attentive as ever. When the child was born, another daughter, they named her Margaret. She arrived healthy and strong, greeted by a family that understood love as something given freely, not earned through suffering. Years continued to unfold. The home for women expanded beyond London. Letters arrived daily from those who had found safety and hope through Rose's work. Some returned to thank her. Some simply moved forward with their lives, which was thanks enough. Rose aged into herself. Lines appeared at the corners of her eyes. Her hair showed strands of silver. She welcomed them. They were marks of time lived, not endured. One afternoon, she stood again near the ravine where her life had nearly ended. The land was peaceful now. The water below moved gently. Henry stood beside her, silent and respectful. "I wanted to see it again," Rose said. "Are you afraid?" he asked. "No," she replied. "I am grateful." She looked at the place where she had once believed death was the only escape. She felt no pull toward it now, only understanding. That pain had been real. That despair had been honest, but it had not been permanent. Henry placed his arm around her shoulders. "You changed the world," he said quietly. Rose shook her head. "No, I changed my life." And that made room for others to change theirs. They returned home together. In the years that followed, Rose often spoke to women who stood where she once had. Not at ravines, but at invisible edges. She did not promise easy answers. She did not offer quick cures. She offered truth. That healing took time. That love existed. That safety was not weakness. That choosing to live was sometimes the bravest act a person could make. Henry remained her steady presence. He never claimed to have fixed her. He never believed she had been broken. He loved her as she was, and as she became. On the anniversary of the night they met, they always walked together, sometimes in silence, sometimes with quiet laughter, always with gratitude. At 25, Rose had married the Duke who saved her life. At 35, she understood that being saved had only been the beginning. At 45, she knew this with certainty. Her life was not defined by the moment she nearly ended it. It was defined by every moment she chose to continue. And in choosing to live, to love, and to help others find the same courage, Rose Catherine Ashford became something she had never imagined possible. She became free.